Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of Validate Me. I'm Peter Rosenberg, happy to be with you. Back from Italy, had a wonderful time with Natalie and Maya, running around. We were in Florence, we were in Torino, we were in Florence, we were in Italy. Vacation with a 16-month-old, as many of you I'm sure know, it's not exactly what I'd call vacation, but it was a wonderful trip, and we had a great time. And big shout out to Peter Guns, whose episode we put out last week. I know there are probably, a lot of people who may have thought I'm either not familiar with Peter Guns or why is Rosenberg doing a hip hop interview on this show? I didn't think that's what it was about. I hope you made some time to try to give it a listen because every week we're going to have different stories from different people. And I think Peter's was yet again just another different and interesting version of some of the same problems that so many of us deal with. Obviously, me and Pete have very different issues. And we view things slightly differently, but I thought it was fascinating to hear his entire story. And obviously his childhood trauma, how that played in. And then also some of the other things he deals with, not just in terms of cheating, which is such a big part of Peter's story, but also like aging, as an artist, as a public figure, dealing with all those feelings. Just a lot of great stuff in there. So shouts to Peter Guns, and thank you very much for the vulnerability. I thought he was fantastic. This week, I am excited to have no guest to talk to in studio because I wanted to focus on talking with you guys. Specifically, people who have reached out to validatemeshow@gmail.com. We're going to read emails as always, but we're also going to talk to a couple of listeners of the show for the first time. So very excited to get into it here on week 3 of Validate Me. Hi, Peter. Thank you for your service and for respecting the tenet of anonymity. This project is going to save lives. Please see below for my story and for an initiative that I'm working on that would really benefit from your voice and platform. My name is Mike, and I'm a recovering sex and love addict. I wasn't in program at the time, but I strongly suspected we had the same issues almost a decade ago, based on 2 small moments from your radio shows. The first was a joke in passing you made about asking strangers online for their ASL, age, sex, location. Yes, I was definitely about that life. The second moment was during a discussion of Me Too, where I noticed that you were being very quiet, which is rare for someone as outspoken as yourself. Like most folks, I started to explore my sexuality around 13 years old. My first experience with masturbating was picking up sex workers in GTA Vice City. I started to look up porn, but I didn't know my dad was monitoring my searches. He confronted me about this and told me that what I was looking for was dirty and wrong. As an adult, I recognized that he was trying to protect me, but the shame in that moment made me feel that I couldn't ask for help as the disease progressed into my teens and 20s. As you mentioned in your trailer, as life got harder, I fell deeper and deeper into sex, love, and fantasy to escape stress, depression, and loneliness, and started frequenting strip clubs and massage parlors in NYC. In April of 2025, I was going through a tough time in my life. I didn't receive a promotion at work, which would have given me validation, and I couldn't work out due to a back injury. To numb my pain, I went to a strip club and worsened my back injury. I started to have suicidal thoughts due to the shame of acting out and fear of being forever injured. Luckily, I reached out to my parents, found a therapist, and started attending meetings. During my active addiction, I discovered an underground network of Johns that call themselves the Mongers. The Mongers have a website that reviews sex workers. It's run by an NYC real estate agent. I'm not going to give the guy's name that he listed here, just out of my own legal precautions. And he goes by an alias. While I believe sex work should be legal and heavily regulated, I think the popularity of this website normalizes acting out for other young men who are sick and suffering. I've written to New York State representatives about shutting it down, but can you please shed light on this and assist me in getting this taken off the internet? Thanks again for your service and good luck with Validate Me. Mike. Mike, I appreciate this message for a lot of reasons. Without knowing more about this, I obviously can't jump into going after anything because I would need to fully understand it more and have the political and legal ramifications in order for me to do anything like that. Although I certainly appreciate and understand why you would feel that way. It sounds really troubling. Um, Thank you for sharing this. I think that's your story taps into something that so many of us have dealt with, which is our early sexual experiences, little things happening along the way, like you talked about your father's way of responding. These little things that may have led to shame and as a result, other behavior that then went on to become problematic. I've tried so many times to figure out and pinpoint what little things happened that may have affected the way I viewed sex and the way I viewed women and wanting attention. And it's very hard to figure out what went wrong. But obviously, that story for you really stuck with you. Good for you for finding help. We're going to do, I want to have a guest at some point who's really deep in the world of the massage parlors and the strip clubs come on. Because there's so many, obviously here on Validate Me, I'm focusing on validation addiction because I find the term sex addiction to be problematic, unrepresentative of a lot of people's issues, and so I don't think it's the most inclusive terminology to use. That being said, within these parameters of validation addiction, sex addiction, whatever, there are some things that are going to come up repeatedly. Promiscuity, cheating, and massage parlors and strip clubs are obviously part of it, and and pornography certainly. For some people, that's the whole thing. For some people, their sex addiction or need for validation comes straight from pornography. Interesting to hear that his started from playing GTA Vice City, which will be another interesting thing I've never really heard much about. Which, to start off the show, reminds me, because we're about to talk to a couple of listeners. And I haven't gotten to say this explicitly, and I was talking about it with Natalie and realized it's important. Obviously, I am not a professional. I am not an expert. I am not going to give anyone any sort of medical advice or professional seeming advice. I'm not going to purport to have some sort of magic bullet to solve all of your problems. All I hope to do, and I want to come up, maybe you guys can help me come up with the phrasing of this. All I want to do is have conversations where we can explore this topic together and by talking about it, gain comfort and hopefully willingness to go explore getting real help for it. But one thing I don't want to do is A, ever pretend to be an expert or professional or a doctor, and B, try to be some sort of guru, even though I do that on Ebro Laura Rosenberg every day, to be some sort of like life guru who's telling people what to do. I find that to be so irritating, and I hate false prophets, and I hate snake oil salesmen, and I'm not about that. I just want us to all have a chat. That's all we can do is talk about these things and realize that some of the behaviors that we've done may not be normal behavior, but that doesn't make them uncommon. And so it's just for me about finding common ground. If you want to share your stories, please send them, validatemeshow@gmail.com. You can either stay completely anonymous, you can send a first name, you can tell me you don't want any name, you can tell me to leave certain parts out of the story. And then, if you're interested in having more of a conversation, you can have it here with us on the show. So with that, I wanted to go to the phone lines, if you will, or computer lines or whatever it may be, and bring in Jasmine. Jasmine sent an email. Jasmine, would it help if do you want me to read your message or do you just want to tell us your story?
It's your show, bro. Thank you for your service in advance, but it's your show. So you tell me if you want real time context, and you can go off of asking me questions, or you can read the email. It's up to you. I'm.
Well,
in
I
your
I
space.
appreciate your flexibility on that, and thank you for the kind
Yeah.
words, and thank you for listening to the first episode. And let's just get.
Oh, I listened to the second episode yesterday with Peter. Awesome. I love that he happened to mention women do this too, but that's another story. And I was like, oh my God, what are the odds that I sent the email I sent and just mentioned, like, hey, women are doing this too. And, I think men get
Yeah,
generalized.
no,
You
no,
get general.
I totally agree with you, and I appreciate. I've gotten a few emails from women so far, and I thought two things. Number one, I want women to feel that this is a safe space to have the conversation. Number one. Number two, I knew dudes would want to hear stories from women, so it's a double
Absolutely.
whammy of both. I think
Absolutely.
everyone will find it interesting, and then also your how honest you were in your message. I just thought this would be a worthwhile conversation. So first and foremost, thank you for chatting with us. What is your deal? What is your story with validation addiction?
So I think what pulled me in with when I listened to your first episode was when you talked about how you thought that your first wife was going to stay. And I grew up in a home where I watched infidelity, and the one thing that I did know was that my mom stayed. And so I think it normalized not just infidelity, but that even with infidelity people would tolerate it, people would take it. And I was so, so, so fortunate that when I hit my like rock bottom, my husband now, he stayed with me because he had been with me for so many years where I was such a piece of shit to him. And he didn't deserve anything that I did to him. And I did it anyway. And I did it repeatedly and repeatedly. And I was wrong. And I had to learn about accountability in real time as an adult because I wasn't taught what that meant. And so I realized I was hurting someone I cared about and I wasn't loving him properly. And at my lowest, I felt like he could have been like, haha, good for you. This is what you get after everything you put me through. And he didn't. He was the only one that was right there by me when I hit my lowest point, and I knew I needed to be better if I was gonna
So what's
get
the
better.
what's the origin story of your issues? Do you remember when you first started having sort of inclinations to do things that might be outside of your character otherwise?
Um, I was 14 when I lost my virginity to a 23-year-old convict. And didn't think there was anything odd about that until within the last year I had said it to someone and she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "For what?" And she was like, Girl, that's SA." And I just never looked at it like that. And I think that because I had been out there from so young in a way that was already inappropriate and there were no consequences behind it, it just kind of became a pattern at that point to want to get that high of feeling wanted and looked at and having that attention. And I think that's where my need for attention probably started.
So was the guy you slept with when you were 14? I also lost my
Mm.
virginity at 14, but it was not a 23-year-old. Was that a boyfriend? Was it just it was or just a thing that happened?
I mean, is there a boyfriend for a 14-year-old with a 23-year-old to begin with? So
No,
even if I said
not
yay, I would say
appropriately
like,
not appropriately so, but I mean like
in my mind, you think at that age, in my mind, did I believe it to be like a
a
romantic
relationship.
relationship?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I think that that's part of where the manipulation of young children engaging in not just sex, but specifically sex with adults becomes problematic
Hmm.
because in my mind, that was all it was. But it wasn't because now I'm an adult and I have kids. And I know that if my 13-year-old said that some 23-year-old woman was knocking boots with him, I'd be in the streets flipping out and ready to slash whatever and whoever. That didn't happen with my parents. Like it kind of got
Did they know?
there they found out. Like they had me drive to his house and everything. And I think that because there were just no consequences behind it, I just continued to chase the feeling that I got with the guy I was with. And so it just followed me. And I kept fooling around with him. They knew. Nothing ever happened. It just continued.
And then where did it go after that guy?
Um, I met someone that was my age, but again, he was he was in the streets, not focused, and I just kept chasing the attention. And I got a little older, and then Instagram came out. Oh my God, Instagram and Facebook were like a drug, and the likes that I needed. And so growing up as a millennial, when these things are just coming into play, it was like now I didn't have to be out with anybody. I could get validation right through my phone. And then it's the promiscuous pictures and stuff like that just to get the likes. I didn't even care about what was going on. I just wanted the likes. And then eventually I got with my now husband, but I was still chasing those likes. And I guess I couldn't make that distinction because now I had been doing it for so many years since a kid. And he didn't know what he was getting into. My poor husband. Oh, I was such a piece of shit, but I'm
Well,
better
wait,
now.
but hold on. But you didn't. But real quick, there wasn't. So there wasn't like years of physically promiscuous like time between the early experiences and meeting your husband. It more developed through the social media piece then.
Yes, because for me, like you were saying, the sex addict leaves a lot of people out. For me, it was more the attention I was seeking.
Got it.
So I wasn't necessarily out there sleeping with multiple people. I was looking for the attention
Right.
from multiple people, whether that meant posting pictures, sending nudes. Ugh, pray to God they don't resurface. But if they do, yeah, like I was sending them. I was sending them to kind of whoever, whenever, ASL and all of that, private chat rooms and instant messages. And it was just a bad combination of things to have come into play for someone who was already chasing attention. It just was, there's free options for how you can get it. And I was going down this dark path already, I think I was on, that I wasn't aware of. And my husband came into the picture, and I wasn't ready for a relationship. I just didn't know it.
How old are you, Jasmine?
I am 40.
40. It's crazy now to think about too, like thinking about the nudes that you sent out. Now we're in an era where like, yo, kids are sending nudes when they're 14, 15, 16 years old. Like, it's like, and I'm sure even earlier, God forbid, but I'm sure. So, like, anyways, it's just so scary to think about how built into society that's going to be. That you could turn like 20 years old and there's already mad people who, in theory, could have nude photos of you or videos, illicit videos. So then, how long were you married before you started doing things you shouldn't have been doing in your marriage?
So I got with my husband when I was 21. To give context for how long we've been together, we started dating like when I was 20, my first 21st birthday. I would say by the time we had my son when he was in 2012, and I want to say for the better part of our relationship, I was thotting and bopping. I We got married in 2023, 2024, like during COVID,
Got it.
and we had had issues like up until then. So it wasn't like we got married and we were in a perfect place. I needed a clean slate, and I really took my vows seriously because of how poor of a image I had for a marriage growing up. And so I was out there the whole time up
So you're saying
until we got
from
married.
so you're saying from 21 up until a few years ago.
I was thotting and bopping. Now, like I said, I wasn't out there sleeping with multiple people, but I did sleep with people outside of our relationship, and I was sending pictures. And for me, that wasn't cheating, but it was. And it's hurtful to the person that you're with, even though you rationalize it as it's not physical. And I think because he stayed, and I had watched someone stay, I just didn't know what consequences were. I didn't have accountability. I was not trying to be better. I was okay with doing what I was doing because he was staying. And I was wrong. I was super wrong, but I knew I just wanted to be better. And when he stayed through my lowest, and he never threw anything I did in my face,
Mm.
I think I realized A, he was extremely special and that his mother had raised him correctly, and that B, he could have he could have put hands on me. A lot of other men probably would have killed me for what I did to my husband, and he never called me out of my name. He never yelled at me. And I, in many ways, feel like I don't deserve him. And because of that, I try to show him how grateful I am for him. And I can never take back the things that I did, anything that I've said when I was the person I was, other than just being accountable and not repeating those behaviors again. But the need to feel validated, it is absolutely an addiction because you'll want it even if you don't pursue it. And sometimes just holding in the pursuit can be a struggle.
So how did you eventually get caught up? Like you're sending nudes, you're sexting, I'm guessing,
Mhm.
and these were people that you're meeting how? Through Instagram, through work, through everything? Was it just sort of
They were
everything?
people that I knew through like if I knew them just in life. They weren't strangers. They were people I knew, but I was like caught repeatedly. Like I was always caught. I was not good at it. I was just a liar. And every time I got caught, I would lie. And
God, that's the
I thought
worst.
my lies were convincing, and they were not. But he stayed anyway. That's why I say I didn't deserve how much he stayed, because I look back at myself and I remember one day he said to me, "What would you say to our son if he was with someone that was doing the things that you're doing to me?" And that like jolted me because my son one day will probably ask, "Hey, did you ever cheat on dad?" And I have to hold space and know that however he looks at me afterwards, I have to be honest with him because I would not want him to ever feel like what his dad stayed and put up with, that he should ever, ever, ever be in that kind of situation and feel like he should stay. He
What
was abusive.
was there ever like one particular come to Jesus moment where like it got so bad? Was there any one event that got
When
this?
I struggled with thoughts of suicide and he still didn't discard me. And I realized if he were not there, I would have had nobody. And so that was literally my come to Jesus. My first prayer to God was, "Oh, just take me out in my sleep tonight. Just let me just be gone." I felt like all of the things I had done to my husband, I said, this is karma because I have been so terrible that this is what I deserve. I deserve to feel this depression, this need to kill myself. And I felt like I deserved it. And at no point did he ever validate me in that way. Instead, he said, "No, you're just fighting demons and everyone fights demons." And he walked me through it. And so my come to Jesus moment was me finding God and God telling me not to take it for granted. I knew that if I messed up again, he was out the door.
So was there one particular event that one way that you a behavior that you did that really sent him to the next place of like this has to change or else?
Like was there an incident that was pivotal for he and I?
Yeah, like you slept with a particular person, someone that he knew, or like
I had put someone underneath another name in my phone, and I guess he had been watching the conversations and put two and two together with the name, and he asked me, and it was the first time I didn't lie. I just told the truth. And he flipped out, and not at me. He flipped out in terms of he had a meltdown. And I had never seen him like that before. And I think everything just changed at that point. We had had two kids at that point. One of them was like still in a bassinet, so really small. And so I guess to put it into perspective, we had had two kids already, and I was still repeating these same patterns. And all these years later, after having our son, 10 years later, it was like, come on, you're still doing this? And
that part's so
he,
crazy, right? That you could have gone
yeah,
through
I
that
felt
much together.
so, I was such an asshole. No, we had three kids at this point. I take that back.
Well, how many you got
We had
now?
Four.
Good Lord.
We have four. We have 13, 7, 5, and 4. We had three under three at one point.
Wow.
And when COVID hit, he was stuck in the house with me.
Mm.
And that's when my rock bottom hit. And so we kind of had no choice but to kind of raw dog it and figure it out. But
Raw dogging's
I
how you
had
got there in the
remembered
first
that
place. Let's be honest.
meltdown. What
I
happened?
said raw dogging's how you got there in the first place. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it was COVID was rough. COVID was rough. And still through it all, we went to couples therapy. We had bad sessions, we had really rough sessions, and through all of that, I was so if he did the slightest thing out of pocket, I was stalking him, I was projecting, I was felt like he couldn't have female friends, like I was such a stereotype. And I was I was a bum ass nigga. I really was. And I say it with not with pride, but with self awareness because I say I was because I'm not anymore. But I take full accountability for the things that I've done because if I don't, I'm I'm not making progress. I'm making excuses.
What was I think this part's important to get into. What was your favorite part about acting out? Like like what did you really where can you pinpoint sort of the highest of the highs?
Like what specific feeling was I chasing?
Yeah, like if you can you pinpoint that? Like I'm asking myself the same question too. Like
Um
I feel like for me the most exciting thing was sort of when the risk was the highest. So like that moment when you were testing a conversation, and maybe it's a little different for women because with women you can basically be more sure that men might be interested. But as a guy, for me it was when I would bend, when I would like push the line of the conversation to test if someone might be willing to go there, and you get the sign that they were. I feel like that early part was the most exciting thing because like so many things with validation addiction, the beginning's always the best part of it. So like
mhm.
I think that was sort of the high that hit the hardest.
Yeah, I agree. I think your answer helped me clarify my answer a little bit because I think that when I didn't have attention growing up because my parents were running around being, they were wrapped up in their own stuff. The first time I got attention was from this older guy who gave me attention. It was just not the right attention, but not because it wasn't the right attention. The attention that it was rooted in sexual promiscuity and a need to feel sexually desired. And so that was my continued validate me high that I chased. I chased and I tried to drive out my insecurities by getting validation from people that felt like I was sexy or felt that I was, you know, the hottest thing out there. And when I was getting it, I was getting it from the wrong people who were just not good people to be around. And so I met my husband, but he was saying like all uh the right things. He was like, "You're beautiful," but I didn't want to hear beautiful. I wanted to hear sexy. And so I didn't value what he was saying because I just always chased the wrong attention. I felt like sexy was what I needed to feel as a woman. And then you remember back then, this was when they had the Maxim magazines and the Source and uh, all of those that were out, double XL. And so you saw women being objectified. And I kept chasing that. I wanted to be like that. I wanted men to look at me the way that they looked at those women. And I met someone and he was looking at me like that. It's just I was so wrapped up in the wrong attention that I didn't realize he was giving me the right attention. I just was chasing a feeling that I had gotten when I was 14 in an inappropriate situation, and I didn't know that I needed to correct it. And I was young. So I'm an adult now. I can't make excuses.
Um, so how do you live now to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Um I built a community of people down here in Florida when I moved, and I opened up a space for everyone that has mental health issues to come in, because I think that a lot of what I struggled with stemmed from mental health issues at a young age that were unaddressed, they were untreated, and you don't realize that certain things that happen to you in terms of trauma as a child can follow you into adulthood. And mine followed me into my personal relationships. And so I try to take everything that I have and have continued to struggle with mental health and speak openly about it, so people know that whether it is what I have done, whether it is drug addiction, whether it's alcohol addiction, whether it is depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, I think that the more people have conversations openly about it, the harder it will be for people to feel alone and isolated and like they're the only ones that are dealing with it. Because I would have never ever put the words validation on it until you mentioned it. And I think that what you're doing is tremendous. I think it takes a lot of courage. I could gag at being on here with you, but I know that, like Peter said, there are women that do it too. It is not just men, and women act like they don't do it or like they are above it. I am not above it. And my son has to know what accountability looks like, even if it makes me look bad. And you are doing phenomenal work. And I am beyond, 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 beyond grateful that you are even providing me with space on your platform to talk about this. And I think people deserve their flowers while they're here to receive them.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being the first person we've spoken to. It's a long, complicated subject, and everyone's going to have a different angle. I think you were a great person to talk to because, like I mentioned, you being a woman, I want people to feel comfortable, man or woman, but also your specific kind of issues. I think are ones that I find particularly relatable. Again, yeah, mine wasn't, my issues going all the way back to the beginning were not ever necessarily about physical sex, though it's rooted in it somewhat. It was always more based on conversation. It was always more based on getting a certain look or a certain feeling. That's one of the reasons I find like the term sex addiction to be sort of silly because it's people picture this concept that like of course I'm addicted to sex. It's like, well, no, I mean, everyone likes sex. That's not what this means. I just think that
Plus, I felt like if you have addiction, doesn't that mean you abstain completely from it to be in recovery? Like if you're a sex addict and you're not abstaining, then you're not. I don't know. I've always felt like sex addiction was BS, because people that are in like alcohol recovery, they don't drink. If you're in drug addiction, you don't do drugs. So like, are people in sex addiction recovery? Are they just out here not hunching? Like,
well,
I'm
but
not buying it.
you could also connect it though to like food addiction, right? Which is a real thing, and people still have to eat. That's one of the things that makes things like food addiction issues and sex addiction issues so complicated, is you have to figure out a healthy relationship with it because it's going to be a part of your life forever. Like your sexuality is not going away. I mean, you may have different version of sex life. You may be abstinent, but your sexual feelings, those things aren't going away. It's so just like food addiction, this is something you have to figure out one way or the other. Last question I have for you: are you guys now like? It sounds like based on how you're talking, I have to assume you decided that like rigorous honesty was the path for you and your husband forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's got the
I took
passwords.
my
He's got
vows.
everything.
Everything. I don't, my phone is, I used to put my phone face down on the
Oh yeah,
table
of
every
course.
time we were
Classic,
out.
classic move.
Oh my God, I was such a dude, yo. Everything you could think of, change the passwords, putting things in other people's names. Like, I don't do any of that anymore.
Do you,
And
do you
I
ever
had
do you ever
to,
still get do you ever still get fidgety when he has your phone, even though you know you didn't? There's nothing there. I
um,
still can have a moment when my wife takes my phone of like ah. just because of my history.
You know what I can say as a guy, I guess, and you can tell me if I'm right. I think that as men, perhaps, when you're running a house, I think that men take on a lot of stress. Shout out to Men's Mental Health Month for June.
That's right.
And a lot of times you all internalize it, not you all, but I think that a lot of men tend to internalize it, and they don't communicate it because it's seen like they need to just suppress it and man up. And so whenever his energy tends to shift, I think I get defensive and I take his shift in energy to be, oh my God, I must be in trouble,
I
because
did
any
something.
other time his energy would shift, I had fucked up.
And you
So I would
knew,
just
and you knew you
automatically
did something
assume
bad.
I knew I
Right.
had done something. I knew there was something to be found. But now, like, I think PTSD of me doing it, I still like get second guess it. But then I'm also confident that I'm not doing
I
anything. I
know.
share my location with him. He has access to my emails. He has access to my phone if he needs it. Um, and I just make sure I take the right steps. I had one of my little side pieces added me on Instagram the other day. I made sure not to hit that follow back button because I even know that he could look that deep, and I don't even want any traces of following somebody that could trigger him in anything that I have ever done.
Well,
So
and to be mindful of what could trigger you because you just never know. You can never go
that's
to
why I
sleep
said,
on it.
even if you don't pursue it, there is still that need to feel wanted and needed and desired. That was my high. That was my drug. So, yeah, if I'm very honest, do I still want to feel that validation? Yes. I just try to channel it now into putting good out, and know that the right validation will come back, and try to understand that you can be validated in a negative way that makes you do negative things, or you can look for, maybe, I guess, admiration would be better than looking for validation, because if
Bar.
people, right, if people can look to you for setting the right example, then it doesn't really matter who's looking at you any other kind of way, because you know you're just taking the right steps. So I just try to put good out and not do the thoughty things I did before. And I thank you very much for making me think deeper into my own personal traumas to help me put things that I did in my past into perspective.
Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you.
All right. Well, a big thank you to Jasmine for sharing her story. I really, really appreciate it. Um, it's fascinating having that chat with her and asking the question of what part do you sort of miss the most? What part do you think got you the most high? Was really thought provoking for me and made me start thinking about it. Because one thing I absolutely do not miss is the feeling of like guilt and dread and shame and misery, obviously. Those things I don't miss at all. However, there you do miss the highs. Like I think that's a part that I don't like to be disingenuous about. Like, I sometimes joke with Natalie when I travel that I'm like, man, traveling is so much more boring without acting out. Because when you're acting out and you're in the throes of behavior that is, you know, either outside your marriage rules, outside your own moral rules, um, when you're just acting out with behaviors just to satisfy these desires that you have, time flies. I mean, that's one of the ways I think, in my experience, that I'm most able to relate to other people, whether their interests are in acting outside of their marriage or whether their interests are in strip clubs or pornography, wherever it may be. It's like a time suck. Like that's a really, if you're watching this right now and you're wondering, like, I wonder if I have issues like that. If you can just see hours disappear because of tantalizing text conversations, phone conversations, going down like rabbit holes of pornography. If you're seeing time just disappear on you, I think that's fundamentally such a likely sign that you have an issue. Um, but man, those trips, when I would be traveling and texting with people, yeah, hours could just disappear, you know, um, because of that high. And again, I don't like to live so much in the past that you can glorify things that happened that were not good. You don't want to sort of fantasize and get yourself like oddly excited about thinking about those things. But I do think it's important to be realistic about them, and to think about what were those things, and now where do you find satisfaction in your life. Um, you know, one of my favorite things about rigorous honesty is it uh, it forces you to become a person of integrity, someone who is what you say you are, you know? Because even though in certain aspects of my life I always had integrity, when I was acting out, I had aspects of my life in which I wasn't living with integrity. I just wasn't. I wasn't living with integrity with my ex-wife. There's no way that you can be in a relationship and be doing things outside of your marriage that are not part of the agreement of that relationship. You can't be that and fully be a person of integrity. That's not possible. That there's a lack of congruence there. And that feeling of I don't match who people think I am. And it hurt me a lot on the radio. And it was interesting, the email we read at the beginning of the show, the emailer said that he noticed me laying out on a topic about Me Too at some point. And I don't know what specific thing he's referring to, but I know that that's definitely possible, because as vehemently, as passionate as I am about speaking out about men usually doing inappropriate things with women. I don't know. I'm trying to find the words to describe what Me Too movement means. You know what it means, though. Women who have been SA'd or whatever the thing is. The reason I did in some situations lay out of those conversations were if it somehow related to anything that my debauchery could identify with. Meaning, you know, maybe it was a story that involved someone messing around at work or someone cheating or whatever it was. I could sometimes find myself being more silent on those issues. Obviously, if I heard something just, overtly horrible, of course I could call it out and say, that's disgusting, that's wrong, I would never do something like that. But if the story involved like cheating or other things that I could on some level identify with, it might make me uncomfortable and might make me back away a bit. And that's yet another example of how the behavior that I was involved in messed up my integrity as a person. I wasn't able to fully talk about things that I felt strongly about, because if in some way it could expose this behavior that I was hiding, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I wouldn't want anybody to know. So I want to thank Jasmine. I want to thank the emailer at the top of the show as well, whose name I'm now completely spacing on. I'm going to get to that. I want to shout out to Brian, who we were going to talk to on the phone today, but we spent a lot of time with Jasmine, so we'll get to Brian next week. His story is super interesting. But to everybody who has reached out, I have so many emails in here, validatemeshow@gmail.com, and I'm trying to get to all of them. But to all of you who reached out, thank you so much for doing so. That's going to be the backbone of what this show is. And I think that when I originally thought of this situation, and it was Mike. It was Mike who reached out. Shout out to you, Mike. and sharing your story. When I originally pictured what this show was going to be, the hope was and is it's a love line for 2026, 27, 28, 29, 30. That's what this show is to me. We are in the early stages. Myself, my producer Olu, shout out to my guy Chase, who's done a great job helping out with us as well, and of course Laura, who did the fantastic cartoon intro and visuals. That's what I'm hoping we can build as time goes on. So I appreciate your patience early on as we tinker with what the format of the show is. Guests sometimes, caller who I met via the show, email, whatever it looks like. We appreciate you guys just going on the journey because that's what this is. This is a from the ground up thing. This show represents a lot of things for me. Number one, it's this subject that I'm incredibly passionate about. One that I think is only going to get worse and worse and more damaging for more people as time goes on. Another thing is just from me getting to do a project that I'm personally passionate about, that I think can be my sort of space, and it ties right into my validation. For any of you who have listened to me over the years on my different platforms, you've heard some of my resentments, some of which are unfounded, some of which are somewhat founded, about playing second fiddle in different places. I've said this before. No one gets involved, I think, in broadcast entertainment to go, I always want to be supporting actor. My dream is to win Best Supporting Actor. I don't think anyone says that, right? So I'm incredibly grateful for the experiences I've had with Ebro and with Michael K. But in both of those situations, I was cast in a certain light. I think there's, in some cases, good reason for that. I think in some cases there were unfair, not good reasons for that. But I know that as much as I love those roles, I wanted to have a platform that is fully mine, where I don't have to think about sharing any of it, sharing perspective on how it gets made, sharing credit on if it does well or if it fails. I just want it to be me. And this issue is so personal to me that it's just ironic to me that it represents multiple things. Like, in one way, it is just about me dealing with these validation problems, and in another sense, it is satisfying a validation I've been looking for, which is that I can put together a show myself that turns out to be special, and this is going to be exactly that. Validatemeshow@gmail.com. Please make sure you rate, like, subscribe, and share this with someone else who might be interested in the show. And again, I thank you guys so much for coming on this early journey. This is just the beginning. There's a lot more to do. If you missed the Peter Guns episode, make sure you go back and watch that. And next week, we'll be likely to have a guest, but we will also get to your emails as well at validatemeshow@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow on that Instagram as well. Appreciate you so much. We'll catch you guys next week right here on Validate Me.